of the monster Seoul, a dazzling city of lights, its streets never sleeping. But beneath that glitter, in the early 2000s, a monster was quietly coming of age. Yoo Young-chul. Yoo was born in 1970 in a poor village called Hwaha in northern Jeolla province. His whole family lived in poverty. His father, a disabled veteran, received a large compensation payment, but squandered it all on gambling. His parents' marriage was a non-stop series of fights. In the end, his mother left him and his 3 siblings with their grandmother and disappeared. The grandmother was also poor, so after a few years, she returned him to his father's care. He was born colorblind and from childhood felt like an unwelcome child. On top of that, wealthy kids at school mocked and bullied him. He grew up with an inferiority complex that slowly hardened into hatred of the rich. Still, he was regarded as a good student. He loved the arts, guitar, drawing, singing, dancing. After graduation, he applied to an arts high school, but was rejected and had to attend a technical school. Beginning in his 2nd year of high school, he drifted into theft, fraud, and assaults on women. He went in and out of prison so often it was as if he could never escape the darkness. Each arrest only intensified the hatred inside him, hatred for those who lived in luxury, contempt for the women he felt had humiliated him. A phrase echoed in his head like a curse, repeated until it consumed him: the rich must die, women must die. In 1992, Yoo Young-chul married a massage therapist named Hwang. They had 1 son. However, when Yoo was arrested for raping a 15-year-old boy, his wife divorced him. While in prison, Yoo began planning to unleash his rage on others, and then he made that phrase real. No one suspected that a serial killer walked among Seoul's glittering crowds, stalking through rainy nights. And with every hammer blow, the wounds of his hatred cut deeper. The first murders, 2003, Yoo began his first killing spree. Seoul sank into a freezing winter. While the city's people hurried through their busy lives, Yoo Young-chul quietly mapped out his first plan to kill. His targets, wealthy, elderly people living alone in upscale apartments. To Yoo, they were parasites of society, the kind of people he believed deserved to die. He carried no gun, no knife, only a hammer. A simple tool, but in his hands, brutally effective. In the dark, Yoo slipped into the home of an affluent professor couple, Lee Deok-soo, 72, and Lee Yoon-ok, 67. He crept close to his victims, no warning, no words, only swift, decisive blows, the sound of skulls cracking, bodies collapsing onto the cold floor, blood sprayed across the wall, dripping down to stain the polished ground. In seconds, a quiet room had become a slaughterhouse. Once it was done, Yoo walked away, leaving the scene as if nothing had happened. Not a drop of blood stained him, all blocked by the raincoat he always wore when he killed. The next morning, police found the body of a wealthy, elderly man inside his luxury apartment. Just weeks later, another elderly victim was discovered murdered in their private home. The scene was identical: repeated blows to the head with a blunt weapon, instant death. Then another case, and another, and another. Within a few months, Yoo had killed at least 10 elderly victims. Each time he struck at night, breaking in silently, striking quickly and without hesitation. No gun, no knife, only a hammer. After the murders, Yoo rarely bothered stealing valuables. Instead, he staged the scenes. Perhaps what he craved most wasn't money, but the intoxicating sense of power from extinguishing life, blood spreading, bodies falling. Investigators in South Korea were baffled. They couldn't determine the killer's motive, nor realize it was the work of one man. To them, the crimes looked like random robberies, possibly committed by different offenders. But when the target changed, the deaths of wealthy old men in 2003 no longer satisfied Yoo Young-chul. His thirst for blood grew stronger, pushing him toward a new kind of prey. Within him simmered a deep hatred for women. Women who had once scorned him, abandoned him, treated him as nothing more than a poor, worthless ex-con. From that resentment, Yoo decided women would become his next targets. Late in 2003, Yoo began seeing a new girlfriend. But the moment she discovered his criminal record, she refused to meet him again. Infuriated by her rejection, Yoo vented his rage on a male victim, Chung, 47, brutally killing him. Yet the anger did not subside. Instead, he resolved to carry out justice, punishing what he called filthy women. In South Korea, prostitution had long been a deep-rooted issue. Women in the trade were stripped of basic rights, facing stigma from family, society, and the state. In the early 2000s, protests erupted demanding human rights for women, including sex workers. By 2004, the government passed the Punishment Act and Protection Act, officially recognizing women's rights. But to Yoo, who despised women, this was intolerable. As a child, he feared and resented his mother's cold gaze, the look that told him your birth was a mistake. After his wife left him and a new girlfriend rejected him, seeing prostitutes now granted rights only deepened his loathing. Though the law recognized their rights, little was done to protect the safety of sex workers. With just a few lies and a fake police ID, Yoo easily lured women from call services. Early in 2004, he began phoning brothels, persuading women to come to his rented apartment. To them, it seemed like just another appointment. The small, dimly lit room, the door locked behind them. None suspected that beyond that door, a nightmare awaited. All it took was a moment of distraction. Yoo would strike with his familiar hammer, a sudden, crushing blow, a scream cut short, then more strikes, merciless and final, until the victim's body lay completely still. Blood sprayed across the cramped room, soaking the cheap blankets in crimson. Unlike his earlier crimes, Yoo no longer left the bodies behind. He began dismembering them. With knives, scissors, and saws, he carefully separated head, arms, legs, packing the remains into black plastic bags. The stench of death filled the apartment, yet Yoo remained calm, as if he were merely disposing of trash. Bag by bag, he carried the parts outside, tossing them into garbage heaps, dark alleys, even streams on the city's edge. From March to July 2004, Yoo killed 10 women, always wearing his signature yellow raincoat while committing the murders. His downfall came when he phoned a local massage parlor. The owner recognized his number. With several employees missing in recent weeks, suspicion grew, and the owner alerted police immediately when Yoo called again. Panic spread. Headlines blared, "A serial killer stalks Seoul." Red light districts emptied, and countless women no longer dared to walk the streets alone. The hunt in the dark, as more bodies were discovered and disappearances were reported one after another, the police grew increasingly tense. The media never stopped covering it. Sensational headlines ran non-stop, and the public lived in constant fear. Seoul, a city normally crowded and noisy, was suddenly blanketed by a haunting shadow. A serial killer was out there somewhere, yet the investigation had nearly reached a dead end. Yoo Young-chul was meticulous. He left no traces, no witnesses, only dismembered body parts discarded in many different places. Detectives sat in the investigation room, watching piles of case files grow thicker, but every clue was tiny and blurred. All they knew was that the perpetrator was a man. Who he was, no one could say. Meanwhile, Yoo grew bolder. He continued calling prostitution hotlines in the same calm, even voice. He lured victims into his familiar apartment, where the dim yellow light still flickered and his hammer and knives waited. The killings came one after another so quickly that before police could finish processing one scene, a new body would be found. Fear thickened. Sex workers whispered to each other about a monster hunting them. Many trembled, but still had to enter strangers' rooms to earn a living, never sure if they would return intact. Then one night in July 2004, a woman entered Yoo's apartment. Everything began as before. He struck, swift and sudden. But this time, something slipped. The woman fought back, struggling desperately to escape his bloody grasp. Her cries echoed through the building. Neighbors switched on lights and opened doors, horror in their eyes as they saw the bloodied woman. Police were called immediately. With the testimony of this rare surviving witness, the most important piece of the puzzle finally clicked into place. Yoo Young-chul's identity was quickly revealed. He was no longer an invisible shadow. An urgent arrest warrant was issued, and the police began sweeping likely areas. But Yoo escaped again, slipping into the night like a wounded beast, more dangerous than ever. The city once more felt suffocating. People whispered that when a monster knows it is being hunted, it grows hungrier and more frenzied. And everyone wondered, how many more would have to die before the police caught Yoo Young-chul? Caught in the net, those days felt like a nightmare for the police. Yoo didn't just vanish from their sight, he also left behind countless false trails, exhausting and frustrating the entire investigation team. At times, they thought they were closing in. But when they arrived, all they found was an empty room and the lingering stench of rotting flesh in the air. Yoo's brutality shocked even the underworld of South Korea. Many pimps and gangsters joined forces with the police, setting traps to catch him. Then, on a rainy night, July 15, 2004, fate struck. Yoo was spotted hiding in a shabby, deserted area near Grand Mart in Mapo district. When he stepped out onto the street, his face caught the eye of an undercover officer who had been waiting there. The police lunged immediately. Yoo had fallen into the net. He resisted furiously, thrashing, screaming. He bit, he kicked, like a beast ensnared, raging in desperation. But in the end, he was overpowered, his hands cuffed tightly, his body pinned to the cold ground. Crowds gathered, shouting and cursing around him. Everyone wanted to see with their own eyes the demon in human skin who had terrorized an entire city. In the flashing lights of police cars, Yoo lifted his head. No regret, no fear, only a twisted, faint smile, as if he were daring the whole world to defy him. When Yoo Young-chul was finally taken into custody, people thought the nightmare was over, but no one expected what came next. During interrogation, he confessed to a staggering number, more than 20 lives taken by his hands. And that, he hinted, was only the visible tip of the iceberg. The monster's confession. In the cramped interrogation room, the cold white light shone down on Yoo Young-chul's emotionless face. Across from him sat the investigators, pens in hand, eyes fixed on his every move. But Yoo did not tremble, nor did he show fear. Instead, he seemed almost at ease, proud even, as if he had finally found an audience to hear his story. He began recounting each death, every hammer blow, every scream silenced. He remembered every detail with chilling clarity, the dates, the locations, even the way his victims collapsed to the ground. The investigators listening clenched their jaws to maintain composure, for Yoo's tone was not that of a man confessing guilt, but of someone boasting about trophies. The number he admitted left the room in stunned silence. 21 lives taken. The wealthy, the sex workers, each one reduced to a pawn in his bloody game. He described even the act of dismembering bodies, the sickly smell rising, the clicking of bones under the saw. And he spoke of it all in a disturbingly calm voice, as though describing an ordinary meal. When asked about his motive, he replied coldly, "Women shouldn't be prostitutes, and the rich should recognize the evils they've committed." In Yoo's eyes, there was not a trace of guilt. He believed he was purifying society, that his killings were a form of punishment. That warped mindset chilled the investigators to the bone. Before them was no longer a man, but a monster, disguised in human skin. Eventually, Yoo Young-chul was brought to trial. The court sentenced him to death. The verdict was met with applause, tears, and the anguished cries of victims' families. Many across the nation, watching the trial on television, could not contain their fury. To them, the death sentence was not just justice, it was the only way to soothe wounds that would never truly heal. But Yoo only smirked, a twisted grin, as if he had never been defeated. He knew his name was already carved into the annals of South Korea's darkest crimes, a stain that could never be erased. The darkness eventually closed, but its echo lingered in society for years. People still whisper of the Raincoat Killer, the coldest serial murderer the nation had ever known. And in those stories, Yoo Young-chul lives on. Not as a man, but as the embodiment of Seoul's nightmare, the monster that will never be forgotten.